Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. Okay, so this is another episode of Reviews Without Remorse. This is episode number 24. And I am, as always, your good buddy Joe, along with my partner Dave. What is going on, buddy?
Oh, it seems like a lot and a little. This week's movie had me quite in reminiscing mode with regards to movies of the 70s that I haven't watched in such a long time.
This week, we're going to talk more. We're still reeling from Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con. We've got, last week we talked about the movie trailers. This week, there are the TV show trailers. And believe it or not, there's just as many good shows coming out as there are good movies.
Mostly good.
Mostly good. We will discuss. One more trailer came out that we didn't talk about last week because we were so bombarded, but we'd like to get to this week because it's pretty interesting. Professor Marston and his Wonder Women.
Yes.
Edgy stuff this week.
Indeed.
Nothing's going to go back to the way that it was. Not really.
I saw something. What is it? I don't know.
Stranger Things Season 2. Holy
mackerel.
This one blew my mind. Was this a good trailer? You know, again, I always say like a trailer to me is like, this is the prediction. This is our pitch. Do I believe that this is going to be a good film or series or not? I have no doubt that the series is going to be good, that it's going to be a good season. But I almost feel like the trailer itself was a work of art. Not just that I'm getting a window as to what's coming up, because frankly, I don't. I mean, they gave you a lot of imagery, a lot of scenes, and you get a hint and how it's going to kick off. But I really don't know from this trailer what's going to happen. However, I thought the trailer itself was such a work of art.
Oh, God,
it was
so beautiful.
Really, oh my God, was that done well.
Yeah. I just from the moment they walked into the arcade with the little spinning sign and everything like that, it's like, holy shit. And then right up to when Vincent Price started saying, "Darkness falls across the land.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand."
Right? Oh my God, it was great.
And then there's something in that little fake, ghost catcher box. And where is Levin? Where's the sheriff? What's going on? Oh my, it's just so much. It's weird how like they showed and yet just made you question even more. Yes. So well put together trailer,
It really was. I mean, we raved just a week or two. We were raving just a week or two ago about the first season of Stranger Things, how great it was.
100%, yeah.
And then this trailer comes out, and I'm like, oh my God, it was great. And that was, it was funny, because a trailer, something dropped 2 weeks ago, when I sat here talking about the Stranger Things 2 trailer, which really it wasn't. It was like the tiniest little teaser. This was a full-blown trailer.
100%.
So, oh my God, but this was really good. I really was just shocked how good this was. Like whoever made this trailer was an artist. Just absolutely brilliant.
Seriously, just still not really even spoiler filled. They really didn't give a lot away. They just showed off the amazing cinematography that they do in the entire thing.
But you're right. I mean, for as long as this trailer was, it didn't tell you anything except what they already hinted on in the last few seconds of the first season. It was really all it is. Yeah. The first season ended with a little bit of a cliffhanger, a little hint as to what's to come, and this was just saying, okay, yes, this is where we're going to go as a stepping off point. But beyond that, all the imagery that they showed really didn't tell you anything.
The thing about war is it only works if both sides believe they're the good guys. The truth is, we're not so different. We fight to get back what was once ours. But in the end, and this is the end, it's just a city. You'll get used to watching them fall.
The Defenders trailer. Go ahead.
After you. After you.
No, yeah.
No, after you. Please, I started off. You do this one.
I don't know. I had mixed feelings with it. I didn't feel like there was anything in it that really blew my mind. The scene they do where they run into the Chinese food restaurant, it's like they just duck in real fast. All right, we gotta get out of here. And then Iron Fist goes, "Is that pork?" And Daredevil's like, "No, that's chicken. Pork is coming up after that," or something like that. And it was like, okay, I get it. We're trying to get them to sit down and have a conversation. I get that. You don't got to work too hard to establish that. The seasons of the Marvel shows have been hit and miss. Awesome to just kind of okay. So this, it's hard to gauge. I really couldn't get much out of it. And I frankly, I wish Daredevil wasn't the only guy in a costume, because frankly, where I'd love to see more of them in costume, the fact that you only did one with a costume makes him look funny. Like, I want to see all of them in costume, but because there's that imbalance, now he looks like he looks out of place. When I'd rather him be the one who's in place and everybody has a costume. You know what I'm saying?
It makes him stick out weirdly with him having the costume as opposed to nobody else.
Like, why not? I mean, I get that his powers are different, and he doesn't stand up to a punch in the face like the other guys do, so he needs armor. Okay, that makes sense. But again, why can't I get my superheroes in costumes? I know this is like my thing. I'll always fall on the side of, yes, put them in costume. I'm glad Daredevil has it. I wish the others would follow suit. Can't really tell much from this trailer.
I'm in agreement with you. I was kind of like, I was enjoying the little moments. As a whole, I'm not feeling it yet. It's almost playing it too coy. And it's just, there's not enough information for me to go on if this is going to be good or not. We know that Elektra's back. We know that Sigourney Weaver's and she's the bad guy. We know there's a hallway fight. There's always a hallway fight. So we know that that's coming.
Yeah. And even the hallway fight, what we saw, I thought looked a little clunky too, because it was almost like whereas like in the first Daredevil hallway fight, it had a rawness and a realism to it. And this one, it was almost like two stage where it's like hero number 1 gets a shot in, hero number 2 steps up and get a shot in, hero number 3 comes forward and gets a shot in. It was like, all right. I mean, I know it's tricky to film these things, but this seemed a little too stagey.
This was very stagey.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure yet. I will figure it out.
Westworld is returning.
Oh, it was so brief.
It was, yeah. It was hard. It's hard to even comment on it because it was just a tiny little glimmer.
But even that little glimmer just had me giddy. All right, it's just a couple of shots. There's Arnold with the tiger at the river. There's Dolores and Teddy riding horses and shooting people, and the last shot with the man in black looking all beaten up.
Yeah.
That's really all there was to it. That's not even a lot of spoilers, ladies and gentlemen. There it is. That's all it was.
And it's interesting too, because I mean, again, pretty well done. Because again, it doesn't really tell you what. I mean, the tiger by the river. I was watching that, going like, what does that mean? Because the tiger didn't even look like a real tiger either. It almost looked like a big stuffed animal or something like it. So I was kind of like, am I reading this wrong? Is it a tiger, or is it not supposed to look like a tiger? Yeah, it's interesting. It didn't tell you a lot, but just to let you know it's coming. So I really can't say much more about it, except that the first season was really spectacular. That was another one. I mean, right up there with Stranger Things and Mr. Robot and some other shows that were really just pretty stellar. I mean, this was a real smart show, so I'm definitely looking forward to the next one.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Too little of a teaser. But then again, it's not coming till 2018, so it's really, really hard to say for sure, how much. I mean, they've only been filming for barely a month. This is a month's worth of footage that they've put up.
Right.
So
yeah, it's just to let you know that they're still there and they're working at it. It's not really supposed to tell you much.
But still, it excited me more than the frickin' Defenders. They're 30 seconds versus the Defenders 4 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, right. Right. I mean, seriously, honestly, that's the thing with the Defenders. You're saying to yourself, I should be doing cartwheels right now, and I'm not.
Yeah, I might be wrong in the end. It's very possible that it works itself out, and that's fine and everything like that. But right now, not feeling it, but we'll see.
All life is born from chaos. The world doesn't always adhere to logic.
And speaking of even more disappointment,
Star Trek Discovery.
I'm just gonna say it. Yep, not feeling that either.
Yeah, this one, this was another one that was in development hell for a while.
They lost the guy that created it, Brian Fuller. He was supposed to be the creator of it and run the show, and then he was like, nope, checking out. So obviously he was not liking where they were going to go with it. It's supposed to be like 10 or 20 years before Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's put one thing to rest, because this is going to be the first thing people accuse us of. We are not here complaining about a female captain of a starship, or let alone an Asian female captain of a starship with a black female first officer. This is not what we are complaining about. Let's just get that out. We are not complaining about the diversity. Star Trek has always been about diversity since the day it came on in 1966.
Exactly.
So, has nothing to do with that. We are not at all threatened or anything by that. In fact, personally, I welcome stuff like that, especially when it comes to Star Trek. That said, what they have shown me just doesn't feel right, okay? First of all, what the hell is up with this third change to the look of the Klingon race? This is the third time that the Klingons have changed their look. First, they looked like, for lack of a better term, blackface actors in the 60s. Sorry. And then with the movies, they give them like the ridges and the long hair and stuff like that. It's like, okay. They never really, they sort of explain at one point how it happened, some kind of genetic time distortion virus or whatever. But anyway, that aside, but now here's our third time looking at the Klingons, and they're looking different. And this is all about the Klingon race, and it's like, I'm just not feeling it. It's sort of set in the J.J. Abrams version of the universe and everything like that. And right now you're giving me a lot of exposition, and your mistake is you're not letting me meet the characters. You're giving me a lot of red alerts and run here and so on and so forth. The gosh darn trailer for the Orville gave me a better idea of their characters than the gosh darn Star Trek show.
We need protection. Protection from what? The krill. You will die.
There's no way we're going to be out by 5 today, are we?
I agree.
Orville, the Seth MacFarlane comedy TV show. Every single one of those characters had their little moment that gave you an idea. This character is a little bit like this. This character is like this. There was no focus. They were so busy showing off, look how pretty all this stuff is. When they first advertised Deep Space Nine, they introduced me to Benjamin Sisko, the man who lost his wife at Wolf 359 at the hands of Locutus. And yes, I'm showing my nerd now. You can play the nerd sound effect if you wish. Nerds! 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 This was a key thing. They introduced the character. It's like, okay, here's a guy with a lot of anger issues. What is he doing on this space station? What is the deal with the space station? You're not compelling me with the characters, because if you're not compelling me with the characters, nothing else is going to matter. All the pew pews and boom booms and all that other stuff in Star Trek is not going to matter if I don't love the characters.
Dr. Marston, every issue of Wonder Woman is filled with violence, torture, and sadomasochism. This abnormal behavior in your comic is reckless.
Professor Marsden and his Wonder Woman. Okay, when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is okay. I guess it's not a coincidence. This came out not long after the release of the big Wonder Woman film. This ain't your granddaddy's Wonder Woman, that's for sure.
Well, actually, technically, it is your granddaddy's Wonder Woman.
We just didn't know it, I guess.
Actually, I think I even mentioned it, that Wonder Woman's origin was very BDSM.
You did, yeah. You did mention that.
This is the story of William Marston, the creator of Wonder Woman, and his relationship with the two women in his life that shaped his character, which was his wife and his mistress, who he shared with his wife.
Okay, yeah, I tell you, this trailer was pretty, yeah, it did pop back into my head what you said about how Wonder Woman in a lot of the early comics spent a lot of time being tied up by her own lasso, and there was a lot of clips of that in this trailer, and I thought, wow, that is, okay, you're right, this was a little edgy stuff, we didn't realize it.
If I'm telling you the truth, the one thing that impressed me, I mean, the story is a very interesting story, and one I've been very curious about to see translated to screen. And it looks like they have very good actors in the parts that seem to know what they're doing. The thing that I found most interesting was that they showed clips from the comics, which to me, kind of almost feels like a tacit approval from DC to do this movie.
Interesting thought. I can't imagine that's true. I would have to take a guess and say maybe the earlier stuff is kind of public domain at this point.
Or
fair use. You're allowed to. I mean, if they're doing a film about something else, I think you have to be allowed a little bit of leeway with using. I mean, especially if this is like a biopic. You know, it's almost like they could pull the documentary card and say, well, we're doing a show on that. And I don't know how it works, but I can't imagine DC's too happy.
Just because you're doing a documentary doesn't mean you get the rights. I mean, the guy who did the documentary on Courtney Love and Cobain couldn't get the rights to use any of the Nirvana songs, even though he was doing a documentary. I can think of one of two things. One, DC gave approval, which would shock the ever-living hell out of me, or Marston had a deal with DC where almost like how Bob Kane had a deal with DC where everything had to say created by Bob Kane, that said that, you know, any of his original works, you know, is his. So if this was approved by any surviving member of the Marston family, that could be the end run that they could use if they only use stuff that Marston worked on. That's all I can think of.
That would surprise me even more, though. If you told me that the Marston family likes this and wanted this made, that would surprise me even more than the idea of DC approving it.
You know what? Marston can be seen as like the grandfather, or maybe the father, or the beginnings, the true beginnings of mainstream BDSM. So maybe to the family, this is like a point of, you know, hey, you know, the things that that happen in this film shouldn't be so as shocking today as it should then. You know, listen, I live in Seattle, man. You know. And the dating scene in Seattle is very, very interesting. In the respect, I cannot tell you how many dating profiles and stuff like that I see that use the word polyamorous. Okay, and if you're not familiar with the term, I'll explain it to yourself and the audience. It basically means somebody who has a number one significant other and has approval to have one on the side.
Really?
Or maybe more.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. There's a lot about that, you know, and so this type of, and now you have a relationship. I mean, in BDSM terms, Mr. Marston, his wife, and the girl is called the unicorn. So Wonder Woman's a unicorn.
Okay. Well, yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah, you have a point there. Maybe it's just not as scandalous today as it was back then. You know, the other thing that popped into my mind was maybe DC is crazy like a fox, and maybe for the very reasons that Wonder Woman became popular because it was so titillating, maybe DC says, hey, you know what? You want to do a thing where Wonder Woman is like this sexy little nymphette, yada yada? Can't hurt us. So, I don't know.
I'm the type of person that feels you can't hide from history, okay? And it's not like we're changing things or sugarcoating things. This is the facts. This is how it was. This is known relatively within the comic industry. It was kind of a quiet thing that was known. I don't think you should shy away from that. I think things like, oh God, I'm going to piss off people, but I don't care at this point. I think things like covering up or destroying memorials to, say, Civil War generals from the South is a ridiculous whitewashing of history. Pun really not intended. Not intended at all. But I'm just, this is history.
Yeah.
This is things that happen. And to just simply wish it away doesn't make it go away. Germany, for example, very much would like to completely forget that there were ever Nazis there, to the point that you can't release a video game where the antagonists are Nazis with the Nazi symbol on their uniforms.
Is that right? Yeah.
In Germany. And I think that's a horrible thing to do. I think that's a way of erasing history. Are you proud of your history? No, I don't think anybody who screws up in history is proud of their history. But that's it. You either accept your limitations or you let it go. So I like that they're going over his history. I like that it's an honest and unflinching look at the true origins of Wonder Woman. It doesn't matter what she became, but I mean, you know, because what she became is even greater than what Marston probably even sought out for, as far as I'm concerned. But you can't just simply dismiss her origins. You just can't.
Yeah, listen, I'll agree with that. And frankly, it could shape up to be a fascinating story.
I think it will be.
And hey, might just be a little fun to see Wonder Woman all tied up.
It was always fun to see Wonder Woman tied up, even when it happened to Linda Carter. Especially when it happened to Linda Carter.
Rocky, do you believe that America is the land of opportunity?
Yeah.
Apollo Creed does. And he's going to prove it to the whole world by giving an unknown a shot at the title.
Rocky. Holy cow. This was, this is going to be great because, A, this is really a clear departure. Not only is it just wildly different from the superhero franchises, big blockbuster stuff we've been doing lately, but this is also the oldest film we've done so far.
Yes, it's 1976, released in 1976, December 3rd, 1976.
I don't even think we've gone as far as the 80s yet, much less back to the 70s. So this is definitely like a classic for us.
Yeah, I think you might be right, dude. I think this is really the furthest back that we've gone.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm glad we did it. I was amazed. I mean, we normally record podcasts on Mondays, and we try to keep a steady schedule. It's not always perfect. One of us or the other sometimes has things that happen. But, I mean, I'd seen the movie, oh God, how many times did I watch it on HBO? It was a PG movie on HBO, so it was on a lot during the times that I was growing up. And yet, I canceled us on Monday because I said, Joe, I haven't watched it in a while. I really want to get a really good, fresh take. And I was actually surprised at just how freaking awesome this movie is.
I have to tell you, it's so funny that you say that because I had the same exact feeling. I am not kidding. If you didn't say that, that's probably exactly how I was started this podcast myself. Is that, as many times as I've seen this film, I have to have seen it like 100 times easily. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like you said, it's on all the time when you're flipping around. Hey, Rocky's on. You leave it on every Thanksgiving. They do a Rocky marathons. I mean, I've seen this thing, I don't know how many times. It's always playing in the background, or it's been a long time since I actually sat down and watched it from the opening shot to the end credits. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I sat there and really rediscovered this and said, man, I forgot just how good this was. This is an amazing film. And such, like, as you're watching it, you see, like, tropes. This is the beginning of the sports movie tropes. Every sports movie to this very day started. The origin is in this movie. Every single one. Yes, agreed. It's funny, John, we just not that long ago talked about John G. Avildsen. He passed away. There's a documentary. I don't know if you know this, but there's a documentary that they just put out, or it's coming out soon. I think a few people have had like advanced screenings or whatever about him and about how he's like the king of the underdog films between Rocky and The Karate Kid. Like, he really knows how to do an underdog film. Dave and I, you know what, as we decided as we're going to go back in time and start doing some classic films, why not do a quick synopsis before we discuss it, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed. So, Dave, let us hear it.
Okay, so the synopsis of the movie reads, Rocky Balboa, a small-time boxer, gets a supremely rare chance to fight heavyweight champion Apollo Creed in a bout in which he strives to go the distance for his self-respect. From the moment the movie started, there it was, you had the big letters Rocky on the screen, like just filling the screen. And the first fight that he has. And, here's this lug, and he's this lovable little lug. And he's just like, it's hard to describe. He's a hard man. He's a hard man with a soft inside.
Yeah.
All right. And it's demonstrated so much throughout the movie. This movie has just amazing subtlety and nuance that I never appreciated as a kid. Never appreciated. Like, the little moments, like, refusing to break the guy's thumbs and having to talk to Gazzo about it. His desire for respect and understanding from people. And, really finding who it's weird that if you think about it, the one person who truly believed in Rocky throughout the entire movie was the frickin' mobster before Adrian came along.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
The
mobster guy believed in Rocky more than anybody else. The mobster guy's freaking driver gave him crap. Mickey gave him crap. Every person he ran into on the street. The girl Marie gave him crap, which, by the way, we'll get to Marie when we get to Rocky Balboa.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's funny. I mean, he can't even, the very first opening fight with him and Spider Rico, even just, he can't even make it back to the locker room without somebody yelling, hey, Rocky, you're a bum.
Yeah. Even in the locker room, Spider Rico, who lost the darn fight, the promoter's like, hey, that was a great fight, Rico. You know, here's your money. And then he goes to Rocky and he's like, here, Rocky, here's your money for winning.
Right.
He couldn't even say to, I mean, for God's sake, the guy took a headbutt from Rico and he still pummeled the crap out of him.
And he says, like, he goes, you got lucky today, man, or something like that. Like, yes, everybody, you're right. Everybody's got a jab.
Yeah. Everybody's just on this poor guy. And yet he's got the soul. He's got the presence. He's got the presence and threateningness of a lion and the soul of a kitten.
Yes.
You know, and it's so evident just with his way with how he's like rehearsing his joke that he wants to tell Adrian the next day, you know, and, you know, his love of his turtles, Cuff and Lynx, and his little fish, Moby Dick.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, you know, I tell you, the thing that really jumped out at me again, and again, like I said, I'm watching it now, seen it a million times, but watching it now, especially in the presence of mind of, you know, we talk films so much. We talk movies all the time. As I'm watching this, I'm saying to myself, man, now that is a screenplay. That is how you do a screenplay. You know, like you said, it's the tiny little details sometimes that really jump out at you. First of all, like you said, he knows how to write. And by the way, I'll get into the story about Stallone and how this got written, because I mean that to me is as fascinating as the film itself.
Agreed.
But the screenplay that he has in this, not only does he know how to do a great protagonist, like you said, I mean, this is a guy who's down on his luck. I mean, you can't get much worse than this. He like you said, he's getting it from everybody here and there. But when you listen to that screenplay, it's the other characters that shine, that make you understand that this guy really knows how to do a complex screenplay. It's not just, you know, like anybody writing. Any amateur writer who wants to write a story about a guy who makes good, he's probably just going to write, you know, well, this guy does this, and this guy does that, and this guy does that, and he tries to throw in some personality here and there. Okay, we get it. The supporting characters oftentimes get lost in the process. Here, everybody has such a clear motivation. It's awesome. Like when you listen to Paulie and Rocky, right? And Paulie's always like, hey, when are you going to introduce me to Gazzo? When are you going to talk to Gazzo about me? When are you going to do this? Like, okay, we get it. But then as the film progresses, the screenplay goes on, Rocky's trying to just sort of have a conversation, and Paulie keeps sort of trying to sidetrack him back into. It's like, that's a pretty smart screenplay. Like you've given us a character in Paulie that is so believable because you've given him a motivation where he's trying to steer the conversation a different way all the time. You know, it's just like, I mean, that to me is like really good. That is really, I mean, Adrian, obviously, very well written. She's shy, but once he kind of cracks that shell, she sort of starts to blossom and come into her own because, you know, Rocky sort of pulls her out of her shell a bit. That to me is probably the genius of this film. Is the way he writes characters, the way, and again, you're talking about a guy. Stallone this was his first big screenplay. I mean, I think he wrote some things here and there before this, or tried to, didn't really go anywhere. You know, he's not an NYU grad writing a screenplay. This was just a guy who understood how a story works.
Some people just have that ability naturally, and I mean, I almost bemoan the loss of that Stallone. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, that Stallone comes and goes. Yeah, well,
he comes back once in a while, but not as often as I would like.
Yeah, it is very true. This was him. He was at his sharpest at this point. This was the screen, and even attempts later to sort of recapture the earlier magic of the first Rocky doesn't work well. And again, that's a conversation for another podcast, but.
I talked earlier about the tropes. Let's talk about some of those tropes. You have trope number one, the mousy girl, you take off the glasses and suddenly she's the beauty. But the thing is like, it wasn't like, oh my God, she put on makeup and stuff like that. It was a subtle change. First the glasses came off, then the hat came off, and then her clothes got better fitting. And then, you know, she actually started showing like a little bit of her shoulders and stuff like that. That was the evolution of the character. This is what the two of them together did. He felt good about himself and she felt good about herself with them together. And
she starts wearing bright colors, by the way. If you notice,
yeah, exactly. She went from drab to red, and it was brilliant, you know? And not even, like, there's one instance where he even pointed out, wow, you look great, when she was wearing that big red coat when she gave butt kiss to him. That was like the only real moment where they truly pointed it out. But the rest of it was just so wonderfully subtle. You know, culminating in the big scene where Paulie's like yelling at her and she finally just loses it and yells it back at him. And that's like, there's the real Adrian for the first time in movie history. That's her.
Yes.
Right there.
Agreed. I remember when Rocky IV came out, I remember seeing that in the theater, when they do the scene in the car where it's the montage of the last few films, when they showed clips of Adrian with the glasses on, people laughed. You know, I mean, again, Adrian now is a character at that point in many, many films, and she's more outspoken, more whatever. And people forgot, like, when Rocky first started, she was the little mousy nothing with the little glasses and the drab little hat.
But yeah, no, just the evolution of that character was wonderful. And I mean, we would be remiss if we don't talk about the big thing. Bill Conti's music, which was a huge factor to that. With, to me, one of his best tracks. I can't think of a better track. I mean, people talk about Gonna Fly Now, which is a great song for a montage. But I always felt like the fight scene montage, which is the thing that every movie does. The big, you know, oh, they're moving up the ladder montage. I don't think any movie has I think many movies have tried. No movie to this day has surpassed that montage. And the music of Bill Conti, Going the Distance, it's called. That entire music, the fight, the way that they just go from round 2 to round 15 in 2 minutes is still some of the best editing of all time.
Totally. You're right. And I mean, later they expand on that and evolve with it. But yeah, that's basically invented practically. I mean, we've had montages before. I mean, there's been like, I mean, the idea wasn't brand new, but the way it's used here, I think is just spectacular.
Very much so. And I especially love, you know, because he talked about how he's going down the third, and the montage starts with the second, so that you know he's going. This is happening. So, like, as the music is building up, it just starts pumping you up. Like, yes, I was seriously, as the scene was evolving, as it was montaging, I was like emotional. I got really emotional watching it. It's like I've seen this movie 100 times, and I feel like I'm watching it with fresh eyes because as he's fighting, the fight scenes alone look brutal. They just, I don't know how the hell they filmed it, and I'd love to, from what I understand, they did like some form of boxing, and there's a lot of editing tricks and like sound effects and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But man, every time each one of them took a shot, it felt like real.
Yes. You know what I love too that I sort of forgot about until I rewatched it? The opening fight with Rocky and Spider Rico. The part when he, like, in between rounds, he goes to sit, when he's sitting down in between the rounds, he is sucking wind. He is so out of breath. He is so tired. You know what I mean? And I love that because I said to myself, like, you know, some of these movies, like, you know, they'll fight and for what seems like hours, and nobody's even really like too winded yet. You know, like action movies tend to do that. You know, like they're just going and going and going, and nobody's even tired. I mean, a real fight. An actual fight, you are gonna be tired. I mean, you can't even lift your arms after a while, and it won't take long. So I thought that was really refreshing. So you saw his progression. You know, again, he starts as so when he goes from that to, you know, throughout all the workout montages and up to the actual fight, you see the progress. So I like that they made the point of showing, like, this is tiring. This will tire any normal person out. So yes, so like you said, when the fight does happen, it's visceral. You understand it, and you can feel it. You know, you can get, you feel that these guys are like, oh my god, like what's keeping them up? Like, even the announcers, what's keeping these two guys up? I don't know, but it's true. I mean, it's, you know, again, because they were smart enough to show that progression, it makes it that much more visceral.
It almost feel like after watching this, like any sports movie that I've seen to date. Just, I feel like they've lost something now. Because I forgot. Yeah. I forgot so much about this movie. I forgot just how well its portrayal was. And how, you know, how likable the character of Rocky was. How genuine he was. And and how amazing Adrian was.
Yeah.
And even Paulie in his own silly, stupid way. You know, he's got that one moment after Adrian yells at him where he just breaks. He's like, I can't carry meat no more. I can't. And it's one line.
Is that what he says, by the way?
I can't carry meat no more. That's what he says. Because I had turned on the closed caption on my
oh, is that right? Because for years I've never known what he says there.
He's a broken man, and he's just, you know, he just said something really nasty about Adrian, and she's running out of the room, and Rocky looks like he's about to hit him, and he's like, I can't carry meat no more. And it's just, what a moment. It's like, at Rocky at that point, he basically insulted Adrian by saying she was no longer a virgin.
Right.
And it made her upset. Rocky would have absolutely been in his right to hit him for such a horrible thing. And yet, the minute he says, I can't carry meat no more, Rocky, and the way he says it, God, Burt Young he's like, you know, he's so sleazy throughout the movie, and he's got that one moment where his heart just shows and it breaks you.
Yeah. Well, it's a brilliant character because, again, right, on one hand, he's a creep, he's a slob. On the other hand, he's sympathetic. They write him to be very sympathetic. So, you know, again, you can understand why. I mean, I love the part with Rock when Paulie calls the news people, and of course he says, you know, he's all like, oh look, I made you a celebrity now, and Rocky's like gonna choke him. He's like, you know, he's like, I want to kill you one of these days, I swear to God. And it was great. I mean, like that stuff. Again, you feel like you and I have wanted to choke each other sometimes. So,
of course, that happens.
That to me feels like, that's what I mean about the screenplay being so good. It feels like you know people like that. You have friends like that or family members like that. So that, you know what I'm saying? Like, he really knows. I'll tell you what, Stallone's screenplay in this kind of reminds me of, it's kind of like an earlier version of like what Kevin Smith was to us in the 90s.
Ah, yes.
Like, Kevin Smith was a guy, he was from New Jersey, a young kid from New Jersey, so he knows how people act, knows how people talk, and he was able to come up with a screenplay that was sort of based on those sort of experiences. Mm-hmm. This, to me, is very similar. Like, Stallone, he knows how, you know, like, just people talk, regular schmoes. I mean, there's so many great lines in this film, and so many great, like, little nuggets, like phrases, or, you know, like great slang that he uses that comes from, you know, like just the way they talk to each other. Like bum is like the worst insult you could say to somebody. It's calling them a bum, you know, like this one, you know, get a job, you bum, and this one's a bum. And, you know, later on he calls Paulie a lazy bum, and, you know, Mickey always calls him a bum. Like that is like the word, you know, that you know what I mean? And I love that. Like that gives this screenplay such a color and flavor, you know what I mean?
Very, very much so. Realism, like
yes.
It has a life of it. You're not just being introduced to a character. You're also being introduced to a city, and I think the city becomes another character that he just portrays so well. But not like the big city, not like, but in a way he also does portray that when he shows Apollo's side of things. You know, the business side of it.
Right.
You know, with Apollo talking about, oh, you know, we're going to get this from this, you know, closed circuit thing and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, his manager is watching Rocky beat the crap out of, you know, some sides of beef and being like, maybe we should be like, I don't know, training.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's another one too, you know, by the way, that him, you know, Rocky hitting the meat. I mean, there's, you know, you talked about so many tropes that were born of this film. That's a big one. You know what I mean? I mean, again, like he created so many things. Like this is why Rocky became a household name, because there was just such a, like you said, Philadelphia becomes a character. You know, this is like a love letter to Philadelphia. All the characters there's so many people in there that you can, Adrian, Paulie, Mickey, so many characters that are quotable in this film.
We have to talk about Mickey too.
Oh my God. You're a bum, Rock.
He has the best lines, but yet it's Burgess Meredith. Like if you think about this, think about this line. I'm going to say the line. The line goes, "You're going to eat lightning and crap thunder." It sounds so. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. I sound really, really dumb saying it. I really, really do. But when it comes out of Burgess Meredith's mouth, man, I just want to frickin' run up a flight of stairs.
Like the guy says, you're gonna eat lightning and you're gonna crap thunder. You're gonna become a very dangerous place.
Everything out of his mouth is hysterical. It's awesome. Like, I mean, everything is great. You're gonna eat lightning.
But but that's not. He's not just a quote machine either. That scene in Rocky's apartment where he's trying to convince him to please let me train you, where he's just talking to him from outside the bathroom. Holy crap! Did that break my heart?
Yes.
Watching him beg through a door. And the way he played it, just the desperation, but like trying to be still prideful.
Right.
God.
But because he starts off like almost kind of show offy, and he's gonna kind of like try to knock Rocky down a peg or two, like that. Like his strategy changes. He starts off and he's like,
like a good boxer, by the way. But
there you go.
Which was very symbolic.
Right, the mind of a boxer. Right. Right. Comes in, tries to knock him down a couple pegs. What happened to you was just dumb luck and yada yada yada. And I did this and I did that and I did that. And Rocky's like, whatever. And then suddenly he's not getting anywhere. Right. You see the desperation start to build. Finally, Rocky turns and shuts the door. And it's like, I'm 76 years old. So what am I going to do? Whatever. And he just grabs his hat and leaves. And not only is he good, by the way, but I love Rocky in that scene. That scene, oh my God, I love it. It's like Rocky, again. Now, Rocky's a guy, like you said, he could knock somebody out with one punch if he really wanted to, right? Yet he's too kind of shy. He doesn't really have the balls to just tell Mickey off to his face. So he listens to his stories. He sits there and just kind of like, he just sort of ignores it. Yo, go ahead. Just tell me what you're going to tell me, whatever. Kind of ignores him. He says one thing to him. You never help me. And shuts the door. Right? And when Mickey opens and closes the door and then turns around and grabs his hat.
Yeah.
And Rocky walks out thinking he already left, and he's like, whoops, and he goes back in the bathroom. Oh my God, it was great. It's funny, but it's funny because it tells us something about him. It tells it, and then of course, Mickey really does run out, and then he just flips his wig, and then finally he just unleashes and screams his big tirade. What about my prime, Mick? At least you had a prime. I mean, that was awesome.
About your prime. What about my prime, Mick? At least you had a prime. I ain't had no prime. I ain't had nothing.
And the topper is like, at the end of all that, once he vents, once he gets it all out of his system, he runs out the door, runs down the street, throws his arm around Mickey, and they shake it. And Mickey even kind of, if you watch, he kind of does like a step back, like did he just run down to punch me out? Like he doesn't, like Rocky's running at him now, and he's like, what? You see him taking like a step or two back. Rocky puts his arm around him, and then shakes his hand. They shake hands. And it's like, all right, see you tomorrow. And that's it. I'm like, that, oh my God, is that brilliant. I mean, again, a good screenplay will deliver something. I mean, again, this is a compelling monologue, right? It's interesting to watch. It's interesting to watch how the two characters are acting throughout this whole scene. And again, the funny part, Rocky coming out, whoops, goes back in the bathroom, closes the door. It's funny. It's funny, but it tells us something about them. It tells us something about him. It shows us that he doesn't want to, he can't just tell Mickey off the way he'd like to, so this is sort of how he does it. But then he's still sort of, at the end of the day, but you know what? I still do need him. I'm not going to hold a grudge, and I need you to help. I need your help too. I mean, it was, oh my God, I just love that.
It truly reinforces the old saying about movies, which is show, don't tell.
Right.
All right? Just having him put the door between them is such a show thing. It's not like obvious or anything like that. Him coming out, seeing Mickey still there, walking back in. Again, nothing was said, but it told us everything we needed to know. And finally, just going to Mickey and, Mickey's initial reaction down to the handshake where Mickey, there was even hesitation in the handshake. Mickey's kind of like looking down at the hand like, really?
Yeah.
It's just, and there'll be people that'll be like, well, I would have liked to have heard what he said. It's like, you don't need to know what he had to say. He said what he needed to say. He got out what he had to say, and now this is the natural aftermath of, okay, I'm over it. I need your help.
And whatever they could have said there would not have been as good as just watching the visual of seeing him run down after him and sort of do a quick patch things up or whatever. That's all we needed. And, incidentally, by the way, the shot of Rocky coming out of the bathroom, seeing Mickey and going, whoops, and walking back, Stallone, like you said, he's a guy with ups and downs. But boy, if his acting is not spectacular in this film.
Oh, 100%, yes.
I mean, that look alone, a lot of guys could not have pulled that off, could not have done that right. He knew exactly how to do that. You know what I mean? I think his acting in this film is stellar, is absolutely stellar.
I feel like almost every scene that Stallone does in this movie is nobody understands this character. This is his Han Solo, okay? This is a movie that you cannot reboot this movie. I know someday somebody's going to try to reboot this movie, and I hope I'm dead when they do that. But you can't. Nobody understands this character for this time frame for that piece better than him.
I tell you what, I think you've already seen the reboot of this film, and I think they probably did it the best way they could possibly do it.
You mean Creed?
Yeah. This film has essentially been rebooted, and I think you've already seen it. And I think the fact that they're doing a Creed 2 shows that they intend to make a series of films out of this, or just keep going as long as people are interested. And again, I think like I said, I don't want to jump ahead, but the passing of the torch, so to speak, was probably the smartest thing they could have done, as opposed to trying to redo Rocky from scratch, Star Trek style with different actors. Yeah, that would have been a mistake. I think what they're doing is probably pretty smart.
I agree, but I don't really think of Creed as a quote-unquote reboot. I'd say more like a soft reboot. Where, they're not getting rid of, they didn't recast Rocky.
Right.
They're not forgetting the history that came before. They're taking it what is to the next logical level. He can't keep fighting.
I'm using the term reboot in a more general sense, not the specific sense that we talk about, because you're right, there are reboots and restarts and yada, yada, yada. No, you're right. It's not a reboot in the technical sense, but just strictly in terms of how can we make more of these, this like I said, this is the best way you can do it. You start with a different character with his own motivations, but the feeling is still there. The style is still there. In fact, I think they recapture some of the style in Creed spectacularly. I mean, again, Rocky is a series that really sort of goes off into left field at certain points. To the point where you wonder, like, wow, where are they going to go from there? Can they really get back to basics? And they do at different times with different levels of success. I don't want to jump ahead, but I think it is worthy to note that this film, great as it was able to be the basis of a big film franchise, because again, it was something that was so incredibly unique. This collection of characters. I mean, I think Rocky is as unique, frankly, as Star Wars in a way. Because, the original Star Wars trilogy was based on characters you like, a world that was fascinating, a score that was incredible, direction that was top-notch. Rocky, boom. Tell me how this is different. You've got a cast of characters, all incredibly unique, all interact in a way that is absolutely mesmerizing, an incredible score, a world that not everybody knows about. Again, it treats its setting as its own character. And I think that's why this film is as a classic as it is, and why it's just continued to live on. I mean, people are still interested in these characters years later.
And it surprisingly holds up. It is a product of the period that it came out of, but yet, you can look past it. Like when I watched this, I got into a 70s kick, and I was like, let me try something. Let me watch Saturday Night Fever, which we could talk about another time, but we don't have to get into that right now. But it's funny. The movie Saturday Night Fever was still good, but is such a product of its period that a lot of the nuance of the movie is lost in a modern day setting. But Rocky, even though, you see the 70s cars and so on and so forth, a lot of that, and with the exception of street lingo, a lot of that could easily take place today.
Yes, it could, and I'll do you one better. I think the fact that it is sort of a place in time that you can't. I mean, for the same reason that you watch an episode of All in the Family and you say, "Boy, this could never be made today," but it's hysterical. Rocky is sort of the same way. I mean, like I said, I love the idea, again, just the weird expressions, you're a bum, we're a good couple of coconuts, and, and this one's a creep. He said, he calls somebody a creep. Like words that you don't hear as much today, but when you hear it then, it's it's got its own language, like you said. And I think that's a reason why it's good. It's not in spite of the time difference, but the time difference now sort of becomes, along with the city of Philadelphia, along with these kind of neighborhood type characters, it takes on a life of its own, and it just becomes part of the world. And that's why I think it is so timeless. It's why I think, if I show this one to my nephew, and my nephew, by the way, again, he's 10 years old now, he's already been through all the Rockies, loves them all. He loved it. I don't think the fact that it was a different era, I don't think it bothered him. it works because it is good storytelling. I mean,
Yes.
like a good story should be timeless, frankly. I mean, I feel like the best storytelling should be timeless because it's about people overcoming odds. It's about, man versus man or man versus nature or whatever. If your story is good, if your story is right, if it works, then it should work regardless. But you're right. I mean, you see early on, I mean, I'll give you an example of something at the end of the fight. Like you said, the end of the first fight with Spider Rico. Spider, you this, minus locker, minus towels, minus yada yada, here's your pay. Rocky, yada yada, minus towels, minus whatever, $40. And you sit there and you go, Jesus, $40. You got $40 for that. Like,
Yeah.
You wouldn't even get out of bed right now for $40. Like, if somebody said, I got a job for you on Saturday, $40, you'd be like, I'm not even getting out of bed for $40. This guy goes through rounds and rounds of getting his ass handed to him, and for $40. So you say to yourself again, so like back then it was crummy, but now it's even worse. So that's something that actually even gets more effective over time.
And he asked when the next fights were.
Right? Seriously. Oh man. I said to myself, for $40, like, what could the rent possibly be back then? What could he be paying for rent if he makes $40 for a fight and has to come back in 2 weeks maybe to fight again?
I don't know, but he had a crappy small ass apartment, so it probably wasn't a lot.
That's bigger than mine. Oh, but there's something I noticed this time around that I didn't really notice before, and I should have noticed this. Did you notice when you see the apartment? You see the apartment pretty well when he comes home and, Adrian comes over for the first time, Mickey comes over. When Adrian moves in, everything is different. There's wallpaper shelves. There's shelf paper on all the shelves. There's decorations.
Yep.
It's really nice after she moves in. And I don't even think I really noticed that or paid close attention to it until just recently. And I was like, wow, there it is. And actually, it's funny. Mary and I watched this together, and Mary was really into it too. She loved it. I remember thinking, like, I wasn't going to really make her watch this with me. I wanted to watch it, but I told her I said I got to watch it for the next episode. She was all into it. She's like, yeah, I'll watch it. But I know she's seen it a million times too, so I wasn't sure if she'd be totally into it. In fact, when we were done, we popped in the DVD for Rocky 2, and we just watched the coming attraction for that one. And I noticed in that movie, the apartment stays the same. It's still got the same shelf paper and all the other stuff. I was like, that was a pretty good touch. I like that. So,
but that in the modern movies, they would have done the slow pan around the apartment, so you got the idea of how much Adrian had changed. I liked that it relied. It trusted the audience to hopefully be compelled enough with the story that the change would be subtle and noticeable, and just show the brightness between these two characters.
Yes, agreed. I mean, and it is so good too, because you talk about this is another film when you have a lead male and the lead female. You ask, well, do they have chemistry? Here, I mean, this is a movie. It's just given. It's a given that the chemistry is absolutely perfect in this film, and when you do buy the idea, like Rocky says, I'm dumb and you're shy. That we're a good couple of coconuts. It actually, you know what? He's not kidding. I mean, between the two of them, and he says we fill gaps. And Paul was like, "What's gaps?" He's like, she got gaps, I got gaps. Together we fill gaps. But when you watch the two of them together, and you understand that it's true. And again, another part of the screenplay that I think is absolutely brilliant. He throws out a word like that to try to explain something. Again, Rocky's not gifted with words, yet somehow that screenplay is telling me exactly what I need to know, and in a way that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
I mean, little gems like that, I think it was absolutely great. So many little parts of this film just so good. I say to myself, are our best podcasts the ones when we do great films because we sit around and gush about them for an hour? I don't know. But you know what? This is the one that's going to set us forward in talking about the other ones. But I mean, this one now, there's not much I can say about this film that is not overly gushing. I think that this is one of these masterpieces that come along once in a lifetime. Everything lines up perfectly. It works great. I can't think of a single thing about it that doesn't work. And again, real quick, I said I was going to mention the behind the scenes with Stallone. If you ever if you ever hear the story of Stallone and how this script was written, it's absolutely tremendous because Stallone he's a guy, he was an actor down on his luck, never really had any success, and he was broke. He was flat broke when he wrote this, to the point where, I don't know if you know this already, but do you know the dog Butkus in the film?
Tell me the story. It doesn't sound familiar right now.
The dog in the film, Butkus, that is Sylvester Stallone's dog in real life. In fact, if you when you watch the credits, the last credit is Butkus Stallone as dog. So that is his actual dog in real life. Stallone was so broke right before this film came out. He basically, the story was he went to the bar one night. There was a fight on TV that was so great. He went home and he had his idea for a script. And in a couple of days, the Rocky script was written. And he was trying to get this sold. He went around and around trying to get this sold. People liked it. They said, this is a good script. A lot of studios were ready to do it, but he wanted to be the star of the film. Now, they wanted, like Robert Redford, a couple other guys they had in mind to actually play Rocky Balboa. He said, no, I want to do it. They were going to give him something like $100,000. Now, he had nothing. Stallone was broke when this was going on. They were going to offer him like $100,000 for just the script if somebody else could star in it. But he insisted on starring in it. They said, like, we'll give you maybe $6,000 if you're going to star in this, because we are not taking a shot on some unknown guy with a crooked smile and whatever else. So as this is going on, he is so broke that he sold his dog. He was walking his dog around. Somebody said, I like your dog. He sold it for like $20. Literally. Ugh. Had to sell his dog, and he said it was like the most miserable, awful thing ever, but he was going to eat cat food next week. The guy he sells it to is the guy who plays the bartender in Rocky.
The one, you want me to take a shot? I'll take a shot?
Exactly.
That guy?
Yes. He sold him his dog, right? So finally, somebody buys the script. They buy the script. Stallone comes running back down to the guy and says, I want my dog back. And he had to pay like $100 for the dog that he sold for like 20. And he gave the guy a part in the film. And that was the part he gave him. But that's the story. He held out because he knew he wanted to star in the film. He knew he was the right guy for it, yada, yada. And the rest is history. So the background of this is pretty tremendous too. When you throw that in there too, I think it sort of heightens the whole experience.
You know what? That's a great story. And I actually think now that you're mentioning it, I do kind of sort of remember that little tidbit. But wow.
Yeah. Like, could you imagine, like, they're throwing $100,000 in your face and you got nothing, and you still tough it out and say, no, I want to star in it.
It was a ballsy choice, yep. And I think the movie is better for it. I don't think like the Redfords. I like Robert Redford. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's his film. That wouldn't have worked for me.
I think had you thrown a famous face in there, you probably would have had a nice, good film, but probably disposable. Like a lot of the other ones that kind of come and go. But Rocky is just, again, Rocky is it redefined a generation of filmmaking. I mean, like I said, Rocky became a household name.
Yep. Well, I'm sure the other side of the coin is by him being the star on the set, he also was able to ensure that they didn't like massacre it.
Right. Exactly. Right. He's the writer, lead, and whatever. Right, and he worked with John G. Avildsen to make it, and I'm sure they had a good relationship doing it. Yeah, Rocky knew the story. I mean, Stallone knew the story. And I keep saying Rocky when I mean Stallone and the other way around, but I mean, it's hard not to.
They seem very interchangeable.
In this case, it really kind of is.
So what was your score?
I have to give it a 10. I mean, this is like I said, this is a work of art. This is an absolute masterpiece. And again, if 10 seems high, watch it again. Sit down and watch it from beginning to end, because again, I know because it's such a masterpiece, we take it for granted now. We've grown up with it. It's on TV all the time. It's every Thanksgiving there's the Rocky Marathon, so it's always playing in the background. When you sit down and watch it from beginning to end, you understand that this movie, nothing. We've said this about certain screenplays before. Nothing in this film is by accident. Nothing is random. Everything is so well done. Like, I don't think there's no cutting room floor with scenes and shots and ideas that they throw out and just didn't really work. No. Everything in this film is deliberate. And not one character in here is not with charm, with uniqueness. Every part of this film is there's no boring part that you want to get through. Everything is great. And again, this is a film that won Best Picture, and I think it's absolutely well worth it. So yeah, it's very hard for me to find anything about this film I don't like. This is my 10. I don't think I've ever given it a 10 on this show yet before. Here's my 10.
You know something? I sat there vacillating between 9 and 10. And when we get to Who Asked You, it'll tell you exactly why I also gave it a 10. This is simply a benchmark of benchmarks. There is no movie today that can go into this type of genre and not pay homage to the brilliance of this movie in both acting, production, directing, writing. Everything worked. And in a weird way, nothing has come close because people sometimes forget subtlety. And this movie has a tremendous amount of subtlety that is just, I was even amazed. Like I said, I was just shocked by the subtlety. I just thought, Rocky, boom, boom, and all that other stuff. And it was just like, wow. It's stuff that the only thing I can think of is like, because probably the first time I watched it, my mind was still, young and immature. I remember the fight scenes, because I was young and immature. And after a while, as you get older, like you say, every Thanksgiving it's playing, it becomes a drone. You look over every once in a while and you'll see the cute ice skating scene and it's like, oh, and so on and so forth. But really watching it with the way our minds have been honed by movies through the years, God, what an accomplishment.
Yes.
What an amazing accomplishment all around on Stallone's part, on Alvinson's part, on Talia Shire's part, Burt Young's part, everybody, Carl Weathers. There wasn't a bad thing in this movie. So yes, 100% agree with you, 10.
And you said something that made me realize, in the later Rocky films, they sort of become a little more action oriented and we sort of, we watch them and we wait for A, the training montages, and B, the big fight. These are we wait for those parts, and we just get through the rest of the film to get to those parts. In this one, no, the fight is not the best part of the film. The training montage is a highlight, but I wouldn't even call that the best part of the film. The film itself it's
a highlight of the film.
It all works, right? All of it works. You are not waiting to get to the next part. Everything works in this film.
All right, Joe. Here comes the hard part. Who asked you? Would you like to start with for your consideration? We can start with for your consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a little bit differently this week because we are gushing so much about this movie. We're going to start with for your consideration.
For your consideration, I'm just going to go with the screenplay. I think the screenplay, like I said, is so well done. It is so fascinating to me to watch. Just listening to the dialogue between characters, how every character is so perfectly fleshed out. Each character has a motivation. You can understand what drives each character. Each character has an arc. Each character, even if it's not a huge arc, each character moves from A to B. I mean, now Adrian has an arc which is obviously very clear. Rocky Balboa's arc is obviously very clear. He is a quintessential protagonist in the way that he is down on his luck in the beginning, overcomes. You watch the training scenes, you watch him drink a dozen raw eggs, like he's doing these things, you feel it, and you say to yourself, boy, that looks tough, that looks grueling. So yeah, I mean, from a typical, this is like a Greek warrior story. I mean, a Greek journey. It is so grueling to watch. Paulie gets a reasonable arc, where he has, he's got his motivation, he's doing certain things. His big blow up is kind of where he peaks, and then the breakdown at the end of that. I can't carry meat no more, or whatever. And Rocky's, doesn't pull off and knock him out. And then he kind of sort of snaps back at the end a little bit more. And even the last shot, after the fight, when Rocky, when he's yelling Adrian, again, seen it so many times that it's become cliche, but when you watch it here again, oh my God, it's great. And Paulie's over there trying to weasel his way into the ring. He goes, that's my friend, or whatever. You're messing up my jacket. Adrian comes up behind him. Paulie reaches back in a selfless act, reaches back, lifts the thing so she can get in and slip her way in while he's still a selfless act. Again, so Indeed. He gets an arc. It's something, again, if you blink and you miss it. But there it was. Even Apollo is a guy. Apollo is the villain in this. He's the antagonist, but you can understand him perfectly. You watch him as he moves along. You see his thinking going through, and it's all believable. So I feel like I could gush about this for another hour. The screenplay is just spectacular. I think it's one of the greatest written films I think I've ever seen, especially when you think about where it came from and how Stallone was basically a nobody. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to give it to the screenplay.
That's an excellent for your consideration. Mine, okay. So when I first watched this movie, and the only reason I even decided to give this movie a shot, and you're going to find this hysterical, was because during the trailers that they showed on HBO, one of the people they showed was Mr. Burgess Meredith, who to me is the Penguin from Batman.
Yeah.
So for your consideration is Burgess Meredith, because he is the one that made me watch this movie. And not only that, but to this very, very day, not only that, but I talked about that scene in Rocky's apartment where he's trying to convince him to do that. And I was watching a man do a verbal boxing match with an obstinate man who was very, very angry with him.
Yes.
And I watched an actor do amazing things with words and nuance. And it was, I had never thought of Burgess Meredith as an actor. I always thought of him as the Penguin.
Yeah.
But now that I was watching this is the first time I've really seen Burgess Meredith, the actor, and not Burgess Meredith, the, wah, wah, or, the eat lightning, crap thunder. Cause that's what a lot of people think of Mickey. Cause that's kind of where the Mickey character grew to, where he was, the curmudgeonly old man that, that he played for really the rest of his career. But here, so brilliant. So, I mean, he starts out as this guy. It's like, oh, why is he giving Rocky so much crap and blah, blah, blah. And then in the span of 5 minutes, he just turns you and he breaks your heart.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Who does that anymore? It doesn't happen. It never happens anymore. And that's, you talk about the screenplay and you're absolutely right. That screenplay deserves every bit of credit and more that we could ever throw praise on it. And every single actor plays their role perfectly. But I will pick out Burgess Meredith, not only for his ability, but because if it wasn't for him, I probably never would have watched this movie.
Nice. I like it. He's brilliant. Can't argue with that. Wow. I'm assuming that you actually have something for this, so I won't try to push you to go first.
No, you know what? I am going to go first. I'm going to make this a little bit easier on you. You ready? Who asked me? I would go back in time and I would use a zapper on Stallone's brain to make him think that I wrote the screenplay. That's it. That's what I would change. I would want the credit for the damn screenplay. There is nothing I would change about this movie. It's I'm sorry. You know what? I shouldn't apologize. To me, in my experience, in all the movies that I have seen, a 40-year-old movie is better than almost anything I've seen in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Easily. So, yes.
I am going to go with you there. I'm telling you, before we started, Dave said to me, he goes, you got one? And I said, honestly, I don't. I'm hoping to come up with something as we go along, but I have nothing. I'm even tempted to say, there's a part of me that would just sort of go with sort of an obvious one. Well, maybe in retrospect, like you said, if I could go back in time, I would have helped with a little more of a budget, give them more budget to do more if they wanted to and help out. I mean, this is it looks like an indie film in retrospect in a lot of ways. So maybe I would have padded the budget a little bit. And then there's part of me that says, you know what? Maybe not. Because sometimes, a little too much money, it makes things easier. It makes one lazier. Maybe it's, would have made it a little too easy to do things. And maybe the adversity it took in creating this is part of what makes it great. Maybe that's, the underdog story. I mean, again, this film across the board is the quintessential underdog story. So maybe helping out in that respect would diminish that. So I'm not even going to say that. I'm just going to say, you know what? This film is perfect. I gave it a 10. So what am I going to ding it for? If I'm giving it a 10, it means I can't find anything wrong with it.
You know what? That's exactly how I feel. There's nothing more you could possibly say about this movie.
No.
I feel like we're insulting it by trying to say what we would do differently, because if we're giving it a 10, to me, and then I'm going to let the audience know this right now, to me, if Joe and I give a movie a 10, that means we have nothing we would change about this movie.
Exactly, right.
So
and that's
so
why
in
it's
that
rare.
case, yeah, so that's why, and this is the rare case where Who Asked You is null and void.
Exactly.
Oh, good God, Joe, this was I really, really was happy to review this movie like nobody's business.
Same here. Like I said in the beginning, I honest to God, I was even debating, do I really even need to watch it again? Because I've seen it so much. I could recite it almost. But I was so glad I did.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm glad I insisted that we wait a day because I was like, yeah, the show would have suffered for it because one of us would have been, giving adulation and I'd probably be all like, well, I don't think it's, it doesn't need that much adulation. But no, we're on the same page now. We are 100% on the same page. God. All right.
So then that is our review of Rocky, the original with Sylvester Stallone. And that means next week, obviously, we're going to be back talking about Rocky 2.
Yep. And then we got all the other Rockies to go through as well. We've got an amazing couple of weeks here.
All right, my friend, and I will see you here next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.